Hapis Island. How we've missed you. Fun fact, if you didn't know already, Hapis is Turkish for prison. This is something that I think might have some bearing on the lore, but is also apt because the poor old island itself has been locked up in some kind of development prison ever since the HDRP backport update to Rust back in May of this year. You see, as far as procedural maps were concerned, it was just a matter of flicking a switch at the time, but as Hapis was a totally handmade affair, that meant every rock, every cave, every road, trail and prefab had to be lovingly squidged back into place like a fine piece of pottery, albeit one that rees at you when you go near it. Hapis, like most custom maps, is a work of art, and you know what they say, you can't rush art. Well, at least you shouldn't. And as far as refreshing Hapis and bringing it up to HDRP backport standards, well, officially that's been taking quite a while, especially as there have been so many other pressing projects that have taken priority at different times. So, no disrespect to the team at Facepunch at all, they've been treating us very well. And in my weekly updates I've tried to keep you abreast of the work that's been going on at the Hapis worksite where I can, but of course, at the moment, there's no end date for releasing it. But hang on a minute, you say, how come you've been showing me all this footage of Hapis Island since the start of the video, and it's clearly a fresh new version and looking rather finished. Does this mean it's ready now? Well, actually, this isn't Hapis. At least not the official version. It is, however, a version of Hapis, because the community were really missing it, and, life finds a way. Also, what would you say if I told you you'll be able to play on it very, very soon, and it'll be a free map? Well, stick with me and I'll give you all the details. But first, I made a huge mistake. I accidentally consumed too much whiskey and pressed buy on an entire shipping container full of pies. So here's a quick sponsor. Do you like mechs? Do you like arenas? Then you'll probably love Mech Arena. Not to be confused with the Macarena, but it is only slightly less dangerous. Mech Arena is a 5v5 mech shooter built from the ground up to promote friendly, competitive mobile play. It offers multiple fast-paced game modes focusing on short, high-intensity team PvP rounds, so you can be in and out before you can say bipedal death machine. Best of all, it's free to play. Take control of a variety of mechs to obliterate the opposing Zerg team. There are a ton to unlock and upgrade, all with their own unique abilities and strengths, and they can be customized with dozens of different weapons, not to mention a huge variety of skins, paint jobs, and hats. Actually, sorry, no, there aren't any hats. I'll take that out in post. Personally, I prefer to go with something beefy with a high rate of fire, but whatever your style, there's a mech here for you. This month, Mech Arena's releasing 2 awesome new maps to play on, along with its first ever battle pass with a ton of special missions and rewards to win. It's free to play on Android and iOS right now, and use my personal link to get a Steel Reaper skin, 500 A coins and 70,000 credits to help kickstart your game. Boom! Back to the video. And so how did we get here? Who is responsible for all of this? How do you get playing on Hapis again? And what happens when the official version eventually arrives? Let's take the first 2 questions first. So even though it's not possible to directly edit official non-procedural maps for a couple of reasons, the original Hapis Island pre-HDRP backport was not immune to remakes or tweaks by the community, and there were some attempts to customize the experience even then. But with the graphical overhaul in May of this year, it was back to the drawing board for the map-making community as a whole, and older projects had to be redone from the ground up to be usable. It was at this time that a map maker called Nox decided to go for it with Hapis. He had made an alternative version of the island before, so he knew his way around, and incidentally he's also one of the people responsible for the winning entry of Facepunch's recent map-making contest, Gravis Island, which I also covered on this channel. The height map for Hapis wasn't a problem, as that had kindly been released to the map-making community a while ago, but remaking it still meant placing everything apart from the terrain by hand, rebuilding a lot of custom monuments, with a personal twist, hooking up all the puzzles, and of course adding in new content that wasn't there before, such as a train tunnel network, underwater labs, a new junkyard, the recent desert bases, mission providers, and of course public phones. No mean feat by any stretch. However, after about 7 months work, this version is finally in a playable and polished enough state, and I'm just going to give you a quick tour of it because to go over it with a fine-tooth comb would take too long, and well, it's pretty much Hapis. Putting the new map side by side with the old shows you just how close it is, with all the major monuments, roads, tunnels, rivers and landscape features pretty bang on, although I'm told some liberties had to be taken to stretch things around slightly, along with artistic license of course, and you will notice some terrain differences, especially around the desert in the south, but we'll focus in on that in a moment. The launch site is still in the centre of the island, in exactly the same place. There's a new small monument next door called Communications, and just round the corner as normal you'll find the sewer branch. Next to this are the familiar rivers that lead down to the sea on the eastern side of the island, and something to note here is that partly due to the way things had to be jiggled in the editor, the beaches all around are a bit bigger, but who's complaining about that? Also, yes, the waterfall is here still, and yes, it has the Cobalt Cave behind it. The northeastern side of the map is more or less the same, with Site A being very close to how it was. On the northern shore there's the collapsed tunnel as before, but here you'll also discover an abandoned drilling machine that spawns a small amount of loot. In the northwest, the junkyard has been remodeled to pull it in line with the new style, and includes a magnet crane and shredder. The loading dock is next, just south of this, and almost looks the same as it did before. One or two differences in the layout and the dock walls, but nothing too drastic. And up the cliff is the venting shaft and refinery. The military tunnels are south of this and are more or less exactly the same, and just up the hill, as will be familiar, is the outpost. Something else worth mentioning is that Nox has also shoehorned in a bandit camp in the southeast of the island, near to outpost B3, as this was one thing that never got added to the original. Also, just to the north of this, you will of course find the familiar Site B. And so we come to the desert area, which according to commits regarding the official remake is being expanded as well. So Nox decided to go along with this in his own version. The pumping station's still here, along with the lake, so that's all familiar. There's also the road leading through the canyon along with its convoy and entrance to the mines. But the big difference is that the mountain above this has been leveled, desertified, and is now home to an airfield and 2 desert camps. Rockety McRocketface here is at the airfield though, just so you know, but now there's so much more reason to visit this previously boring part of the map. The listening station island is here in the far southeast, along with a number of small islands dotted about in the same places as before, and although I freely admit I was never a hardcore Hapis player, walking around does feel just like I'm there again. There are a large number of custom caves that Nox has added, and you'll also discover 6 new train tunnel entrances, as an underground network has been added as mentioned. So, how do you go about playing on this again? Well, as I say, it will be released as a free map for server owners to download, and you'll find this on Lone Design as of about now, which should give server owners a few days to play around with it in preparation for the next forced wipe. I'll put a link to the site in the description. I'm not being sponsored to say that, by the way. That's just where it's going to be. Oh, and before I forget, because this is a custom map made in Rust Edit with custom puzzles, etc., as it has to be, you will need Oxide and the Rust Edit plugin installed for everything to work properly, but those are also free. But the big question is that because Facepunch are of course working on their own official revamp, what will happen when that comes out? This was one of the first things I asked Nox, and he told me that he plans to continue maintaining his version even after that, and depending on how the official one turns out, his may be subject to change and tweaks. It's not trying to be a carbon copy though, there are plenty of differences as it is, and that's the beauty of it I think. It'll be interesting to see how the official version compares to what Nox has done here, but regardless, this could well become an alternative community version of Hapis that might play somewhat differently, have some extra or tweaked monuments, and just give everyone more choice, which is usually a good thing. In the meantime, at least you can scratch that Hapis itch. Oh yeah, and there's a crashed plane on this one too, although it's not all in one place. You know what's going to happen though, don't you? I'm going to publish this video and then Facepunch will announce that they're bringing out the new Hapis on December the 2nd or something. That'd just be typical. It's probably going to happen. But whatever. What do you think of what I'm showing you here today? Have you been having Hapis withdrawal symptoms? Does this go some way towards getting your fix? Please do leave me a comment down below. Leave a like and subscribe to me. Follow me on Twitch, Twitter, Face, Metabook, Discord, and my Steam group to stay up to date with my content, and support me on Patreon or by buying some of my merch. I shall catch you all soon, but in the meantime, keep calm and stay rusty. Cheerio. This video is powered by AWDIT's producer range of workstation PCs, available now at awdit.co.uk. Life finds a way.